Hi, this is Al Williams of Sunset Hill Solutions. This is part 2 of a two-part video series I'm putting together on using XMod Pro with .NET Nuke. So creating web applications right within .NET Nuke using a third-party module called XMod Pro. If you haven't watched the first video in this series, I recommend that you do. But just as a brief reminder, what we're doing here is the scenario is we have a contracting company, general contracting company that has a website. They want to have a form to allow visitors to their website to submit information to request a quote to have work done. They want to have emails sent out. They want to be able to make changes to the information that people have submitted by adding information to additional fields to be used internally, and to manage the whole process within a DNN website and without writing any code to do so. So that's the scenario that we have, and once again we're using a module called XMod Pro to achieve this functionality. In the first video we created a table in the database using XMod Pro to handle or to store the different types of quote types that we want to be available in the drop-down list to visitors to our website. And if you recall, we created a very basic template. Now this is what that template looked like. I'm going to show you how you can modify this and make it look much nicer than the default that we see right here. Let's go back to our XMod development page and go to Manage Templates. So the original template we're using on that page is called TMP Quote Types right here. I'm going to edit the template. So as you can see, this is a combination of XMod code, and it's 99% of it is just basic HTML with placeholders for the data that we have in our database. So because it's HTML, it's fully customizable. We can make this look as complex or as simple or as fancy as we want. So I definitely don't want to have it look like the way it's looking right now. So I go down to Manage Quote Types again. This is very plain looking and not very intuitive, so I definitely want to make changes to this. Go back to the development page and go to Manage Templates once again. So I've already created a copy of the original template we had here, and again I did that just by clicking on the copy. So it created a second copy here that we don't really need. I'm going to delete that, but if you want to copy an existing template to make changes to it, and just so you don't lose, in case you make a mistake, you want to revert back to the old one. I use this quite a bit. I'll just delete the copy I just made. So I want to have that table or the data appear much nicer in my template. And since I'm not an HTML or CSS expert, I can get around the code easily and make basic changes, but especially with CSS, that's not my expertise. The good thing is there's a number of excellent online HTML and CSS generators for tables, and basically the template that we're using for the quote types is as a table basically. So I found this one called CSSTableGenerator.com. So with this particular website, what you can do is you can go ahead and make changes to some default templates they have for creating tables, and you can also go ahead and view some of the pre-made ones and customize them. So what I've done, the one I'm using now, if I go a couple pages in advance here, just see where it is. Yeah, this one. This rounded corner with the gray and black theme, which matches my sandbox website. I click on Edit. So basically now I have this table that's formatted quite nicely. I'm not going to make any changes to it, but I could change the background, the gradient, and the solid colors, and the alternating row colors if I want to. In this case, I want to leave it exactly as it is. So here is all the CSS that I need. I'm just going to change the name right here. So as you see, I just changed the name of this CSS class name to Custom Quote Types, and down here, this is all the CSS code that I need in order to make this work. So what I would do is I would select all this, copy. I go to my portal.css file. I use software called XMod Pro, which allows me to preview all of the CSS within this little application. It's a really nice tool if you ever have to make any modifications to any CSS files. So basically what I would do here, and I've called this something different, I've called it quote template style rounded. So I just pasted the CSS code into this file. I FTP'd it up to my website again, so this is in the portal CSS file, which is located in Portals Sandbox, because I'm using a child portal of my main website called Sandbox, and there's a portal.css file. Now that I copied the code that was generated from this website in order to have a fancy table, I pasted that code into my portal.css file, FTP'd it up to my website, and now what I've done in the Manage Templates form, our page here, is I've made a copy of the original template we had and I've called it TMP quote types 1. If we have a look at the code in here at this point, I'm going to show you what I've done. So while you can edit the code directly in this editor here, what I typically do is I like to actually copy it and paste it into software I have called Notepad++ and make changes there. Just a little bit easier for me. It's what I'm used to doing, and certainly not something that you have to do. So what I've done, the things that you need to know here, the changes I've made to this template. In the XMod template tag here, I've added some code for the add roles, edit roles, and delete roles, and in this case we only have one role that we've created for internal users, and we've called that role internal users, so I've added them to those roles. Now this is just an extra layer of security, because the page in which this template is shown, we've only allowed access to internal users through the DNN framework itself. So this is an extra layer of security if you want it. So you can see now I have this table, and I've encapsulated the table in a div tag, and I've specified that CSS class that we had created on that website, so quote template style rounded. I got rid of the table column that had the quote type ID. That's just a primary key field of the table. We really don't need to see that. The other thing that I did was I replaced the edit and delete links with images, and the syntax for these elements is available in the XMod help file, but it's basically just a tag saying the alternate text, the image URL. I created some custom images I want to use on this form, and that's about it. So I made the changes to the roles. I made a style change to the table by specifying this CSS class, and I got rid of the quote type ID field, and I replaced the edit and delete links with images. Now let's go back to the website and see what this looks like. So if I go to the XMod testing manage quote types page, I edit this page because I want to specify a different template. So I click on the pencil icon, I go to configure, and now I want as the template to be TMP quote types 1. So this is the template that has the changes we just made. I say save changes. I'm just going to close the edit mode here. So now you see a page that the colors match much more nicer with this website that I have, and also it's much more user friendly, and it just looks a lot nicer. So we have the quote type description, a button for adding a new quote type, for editing and deleting, and we have some JavaScript whether or not you want to confirm deletion, and we do not want to delete that. If I want to click on edit, now I can edit this particular record. So there we go. We've completely changed the style of the default template that was created by XMod Pro just by modifying the HTML and adding some CSS code. Now, in the first video, we had created a form for visitors to the website to make a request. So this form allows them to select a quote type, enter some information, and add the record. And again, we had validation added to all of the necessary fields. I'm not going to go over that again in this video, but if you haven't viewed the first video, please have a look at it. It explains how all this is done. The next thing I want to show you is the style of this particular form. There was a number of items available in a drop-down list using the jQuery user interface, and let's say I want to have something that's not available in those drop-down lists. I want to create my own custom particular style for this form. What you're able to do when you're using XMod Pro is you can go to the site called jQueryui.com/themeroller, and you can create your own themes and download them, upload them to your website in a certain folder, and select them to be used for a particular form. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So with this online theme roller utility, what you can do is you can have a look at the different available default themes on the left hand side of the page. In this case, I want to pick this smoothness theme, and now I can see what all the elements will look like for this particular theme. I can go ahead and I can also edit this theme, and I can change all of any element that I want to change. I can change the font size, the font weight, and once I've made the changes I want, I just click on download theme. So now I'll go back to Firefox, where I have an add-on for Firefox called FireFTP. This is what I use to upload files via FTP to my website. And so the theme that I just created, I've called it UI-ZZ custom quotes, and I'll show you why I prefix it with UI-. So if you FTP your website, you go to XMod Pro, go to Styles, you'll see these are all the default drop-down styles that appear in that list, and they have the prefix of UI-, and I just also add ZZ to my custom ones just so they show at the end of the list. I know that they're not the default ones that come with XMod Pro. So I just go ahead and upload them, and now I can see down here that this custom theme is available now, or it's been uploaded to my website. I should be able to view it in the drop-down list when I make changes to a particular form and be able to use this theme. We're back at our XMod development page, and we're in the control panel, and we're looking at all of the forms we have available. So I'm going to click on to edit the FRM customer request form. If I go to styling, so this is where the themes appear in the drop-down list. Now if I scroll down, I will see that one I just added called ZZ custom quotes, and this is what I want to use. So I'm going to go ahead and update this form. Okay, so we've made that change. Now let's go to the request a quote page, and you can see now that I have that style. I don't have that pepper grinder style, which had a kind of a gray background here. I have that new style I just created at this theme jQueryui.com theme roller page. So very easy to make changes to the look and feel of your XMod Pro forms, either by selecting a predefined theme or going ahead and creating your own. So far in this video, we've picked up from the first video that was created for XMod Pro and .NET Nuke by totally customizing the display of a template by adding some CSS code available from a website that you can generate your own CSS using an automated tool. And we also created a new theme for one of the forms that we're using here by going to another website called Theme Roller or jQuery UI and creating a brand new theme that we want to use on this website. I'm still not entirely happy with this form. I mean, it looks nice, and we do have validation if someone comes to the website and clicks on add You can see it does validate to make sure you have the required fields filled in. If you put in, for example, phone number, if I just put in 55 and click add, we still get an error for the phone because it says please enter a valid phone number. So it's checking to make sure required fields are filled in. It's checking to make sure that required fields have the correct format. But what I'd like to do is take this a step further and add some jQuery validation to some of these fields so it's real time, so they're validated before you click the add button. In case you're not all that familiar with jQuery, I suggest you go to the jQuery.com website. And this one paragraph explains what jQuery is. It's a fast, small, and feature-rich JavaScript library. It makes things like HTML document traversal and manipulation, event handling, animation, and AJAX much simpler. So it has an API that works across multiple browsers, and there's a ton of plugins for jQuery that you can add some really neat functionality to your website. So let's go ahead and look at these one at a time. So I'm going to go to the form here before we've added the validation, and we're going to go through each of the ones I want to change. So the date required field, if you click on this calendar icon, it brings up the default DNN calendar, which it works, but doesn't really tie into the theme that we have here. Ideally, what I would like to do is have it match the theme we have for this particular form. And what I mean by that is if we go back to the jQueryui.com website that we used to create our theme, one of the widgets is the date picker widget. And if I click on this field here, you see a drop-down date selector that matches the theme that we want for this particular form. And you can see on this website there's a number of different ways you can use this particular date picker. So you can have different effects and so forth. You can, just have a look here, there's a whole pile of them. And the great thing about it is if you click on view source, you can see the source code that's needed to implement this date picker object. So we're going to go ahead and do that on our XMod form. So let's go back to XMod and we're going to go into the Manage Forms page. And we're going to make a copy of the form that we're using before the jQuery validation. So let's go ahead and pick that form as the original form with budget. Yeah, I want to mention I added another field to the database for the budget that the visitor wants to specify for their quote that they're going to have performed. So I'll get it back into that in a little bit. So at any rate, so this is the one I want to make a copy of and make changes to. So I go ahead and click on the copy icon. So it's created this form right here. I want to change the name. I'm just going to call it, instead of original, jQuery with budget. Save. Before I go ahead and make changes to this form, I want to show you what it's going to look like after I make the changes. So I go up to my Sandbox website and select the after jQuery validation version of this form. You'll see a few things visually that are different. I've just added some information to this form, and again, these forms are just HTML and XMod tags. What I've done, however, is let's have a look at this budget amount field. If I try typing in letters, which I am right now, you can hear my fingers moving, it doesn't work. It only allows numbers, and it formats the number with the thousand separator. For the phone number, you see I have an input mask now. If I put in something that's not a valid phone number, for example just 3 digits, and go to the next field, it doesn't accept it. So it's doing the validation as the users are keying the information in. And for the date required, instead of the default DNN pop-up date picker, we now have a date picker that matches the theme that we've chosen for this particular form. The other thing I've done with this date picker, and I'll show you how I've done it in a little bit here, is I've restricted the dates that can be chosen to today and for the next 2 months. If I go ahead, I can pick any date in December, but I can only go to January 3rd. So we only want users to be able to submit quotes, requests for quotes that they want the work done in the next 2 months for this example, and we can implement this with this particular date picker object. So let's look at how I achieve this functionality. If we go back into XMod and we go and edit the copy of the original form, here we have all our code for this particular form. Now, one thing I like to do, I have no problem working in this editor, but I have another product called Notepad++. It's a free text editor that has syntax highlighting and so forth, and I like to use that. A copy from the XMod editor but into here just makes things a bit easier for me. So with that in mind, what I need to do is I need to add the code for the date pop-up to work. In order to do that, there's a couple things I need to do. So by default, the add form tag at the top of the form is empty. It just has add form. We have to add a reference to the client name. So we're going to call this form customer cust request. I'm going to copy this and paste it here. So now we have a reference to this XMod form on the page. The next thing I need to do is add a jQuery ready tag right here. I'm going to paste the code I need for the script and save. So now it's added this jQuery ready tag. In this code, I have a reference to the client ID of this form, the ID of the date required field, and the date picker widget. So, and I've also set a few options. I'm not going to go through all of the different options you have available for the different jQuery UI widgets, but you can go to their website and have a look at all the different options they have, and you can have a look at the examples and they'll show you how to implement them. Let's go back to XMod. So this is all the code I have to add to make that calendar date picker appear with the same theme we have for this form. The next thing I want to show you is the input mask for the currency. So I just did a Google search on jQuery masked currency, and this is one of the hits I found. So it's this particular website up here. It's called AutoNumeric. You can download the source for this. It's just a JavaScript file, and it has a number of examples of how to use this particular item. What I did then is I downloaded the file. On my website, in the root of DNN, there's a JS directory, and I just uploaded the JavaScript file to my website so that I could use it. I did the same thing with the other JavaScript file for the masked input for the phone numbers. Now I'll go ahead and add the code we need to implement the masked input. If I go back to my form here, I have to add a reference to those two JavaScript files. So I'm going to go down here and just go tags and script block. And I've just called the script ID mask currency, and the script content is right here. It's just a reference to the AutoNumeric JavaScript file. Save. So now it's added the script block. I want to add another script block for the input mask for the phone numbers. So I've just pasted this other script block in here. So now I need to add the jQuery code to implement the masked input for the phone, cell phone, and budget amount. If I go down to this part of the form, I'm going to actually copy and paste it from Notepad because I've already done this. So I'm going to copy these and I'll just explain quickly what they do. So copy, paste it into the form here. So we have three jQuery ready blocks. The first function is a reference to the mobile, so the cell phone field, and it's specifying the mask we want to use. The syntax you have to use is the £, then plus the client ID of the form and the ID of the field you want to use. So I did the same thing for the phone field, same mask. And I've also referenced the function of the auto-numeric jQuery JavaScript to the budget amount field. And I've just set some variables here. So for example, the minimum they can put is 0, the max 100,000. We don't want people putting in $10 million for an estimated budget. I'm not going to go through every one of these particular options you can have on the auto-numeric site. It's very extensive documentation, so it's very, very flexible in terms of how you set up this input mask. The other change that I want to do is right near the bottom of the page we have the add button. I'm going to change the text on this to submit quote request. And if you recall, the other thing that was different on this form was I had some content on the right hand side of the page. So you can see it, this is mostly HTML that's in this form. What I've done, if I go back to my text editor, is I've encapsulated this XMod form in a table, 65% width for the XMod form, and then down lower I've just added some HTML. So I've added a reference to some text here and that image request quotation. So now I'll go ahead and copy all of this back into this form. I don't want to retype this HTML. Okay, so now we have this finished. So the form name is customer request jQuery with budget. So I'll go to the requested quote after jQuery validation. I'll edit this page and I'll make sure that we're pointing to that new form. So configure, and we will select this is the form that we just made changes to. So we're going to select this, save changes. So the changes have been saved to this page. Now we'll go back to that page on the sandbox. Request a quote after jQuery validation. So now I have all the changes on the form. If I click on the date required, I get a pop-up. If I go to the phone field, I now have that input mask. And if I go to the budget amount field, it's only allowing me to type in numbers. So I've implemented a masked input for the currency field, a budget amount, masked input for phone and mobile, and we've also implemented this pop-up date picker control. So those are, and we've added this change to the add button, submit quote request, and we've added some text on the right hand side. So those are all the changes we have for our form. We've really modified the original default created by XMod by adding some jQuery and some validation. So this is Al Williams of Sunset Health Solutions. Thank you for watching part 2 of a 3-part series I'm producing, illustrating how to create web applications using DNN software and XMod Pro. Once again, thank you for watching.